What can you recite if you don't know dua qunut for witr?
So if someone doesn't know the supplication of qunut,
Yeah.
they can recite whatever dua they know. That would be permitted.
Rabbana atina, Rabbana zalamna, all of those du'as.
Yes, that would be permitted.
Okay. With obviously an encouragement to actually learn qunut, right?
Yes.
Okay. What do you do if you forget what raqah you are on when you're praying a fard salah on your own? So you've forgotten what number raqah you're on, the third one or the fourth one?
So you go with the rak'ah, the cycle that is what we refer to as ghalib al-dhann, meaning dominant thought you think you are on, for instance, second rak'ah or third rak'ah.
Mhm.
And then at the end, you do sajdatul sahw, which is the prostration of forgetfulness. The Hanafis have their own specific method, which is by reciting at-tahiyat in the tashahhud position,
Yeah.
up to abduhu wa rasuluh, then giving salam once to the right,
Mhm.
prostrating twice,
Yeah.
and then reciting the at-tahiyat again, and then completing the prayer with a salawat.
Would the same apply if you forgot to recite a surah after Fatiha during a salah on your own?
Yes, because reciting a surah with Suratul Fatiha in the first two rak'ah
Yeah.
of fard is wajib in the Hanafi school.
So
And missing a wajib would require sajdatul sahw.
okay. What if you have small food bits in your mouth? Which is a common issue for some Bangladeshis because they have obviously supari and pan a lot. Obviously, the normal thing would be to do chuluti to rinse your mouth. But obviously, there could be times where you have bits in your mouth.
What they mention in books like Nurul Idah, basic books in Hanafi school, is if it's the size of a chickpea and you chew it, then your salah is broken. It invalidates the prayer.
Chew it, not swallow.
Chewing, because of amal kafir. But if it's less than that, then it doesn't invalidate the prayer.
Can you swallow it if it's in your mouth?
It should be avoided. But
if it's smaller than a chickpea.
More than a chickpea.
Smaller than a chickpea.
If it's smaller than a chickpea, it will not invalidate the prayer.
Okay.
They do mention if someone has something like a sesame seed and it dissolves in the mouth and then he swallows it, it doesn't break the prayer.
What if someone unintentionally, without any control, breaks wind during the tashahhud of the conclusion of the prayer?
So if the person, he has, remember, sitting in the tashahhud, in the end of the prayer, the duration it takes to recite at-tahiyat is one of the arkan of the prayers for that duration. So if he sat for that duration and he completed the at-tahiyat and then he involuntary, his wudu breaks, he passes wind, his prayer is complete. His prayer is done.
Is there a difference of opinion on this, Mal?
So they mentioned two positions. In the school, there are two positions. One is al-khuruj bi-sun'i, which is doing something of his own device, must be done with the salam.
Mm-hmm.
So some people, they choose that as the mu'tamad position of the school, that if he doesn't do salam, his prayer is not valid. But the second position within the school is that the khuruj with salam is wajib. It's not sharta within the salah. And that is, the fatwa is actually given on the second.
Okay.
If you check the Hashia of Ibn Abdin, it's on the second.
Does your wudu break if you laugh during salah for the Hanafis?
So this position is unique to the Hanafis. And some of the ulama, they mention that this demonstrates that the Hanafis actually act upon hadith before qiyas. So analogy.
So which hadith is that?
There's a weak hadith in the Sunan of Ad-Daraqutni that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was leading the prayer, and whilst leading the prayer, a man came in and fell. It mentions a well, and some of the Sahaba laughed out aloud, which is referred to as qahqaha, and they were, at the completion of the prayer, they were commanded to repeat their wudu and prayer. So the Hanafis act upon that hadith.
Though the hadith is weak.
But they only apply the ruling on prayers which have no sajda and ruku', which would mean in salatul janaza, it doesn't invalidate the wudu in salatul janaza, and also in Eid prayer. So just in janaza.
So if you crack.
So if someone passes wind, in salatul janaza, they can do tayammum from the walls in the Hanafi school. If they pass wind in Eid prayer, they can do tayammum from the walls. If they laugh out aloud, it will break the wudu and prayer in Eid prayer, but in Salatul Janaza, it will only invalidate the prayer.
What constitutes as laughter?
Laughter, by definition, how they define laughter is laughing out aloud to the extent that the person next to you can hear your laughter.
So it's the person next to you, not you hear yourself laugh.
And yourself.
Yeah.
Yes. So some of them, they mention that if someone hears themselves, it would invalidate the prayer as well. That would count as qahqaha.
Okay.
While tabassum is just smiling.
And that doesn't break.
So if someone smiles, that doesn't invalidate the prayer.
Okay. Is chess permissible?
So chess in the Hanafi school has 4 conditions, 4 shurut, for it to be valid. If you check Khalil bin Abdul Qadir al-Nahlawi's book, Al-Hadar wal-Ibaha, he mentions the 4 conditions. From those conditions is that the person does not miss the prayers, the salah. It does not become addictive. They do not gamble. So they mention these conditions. With those conditions, chess is permissible in the Hanafi school.
Unless it transgresses or
violates any
those.
one of those conditions.
Okay. Can we greet non-Muslims on their religious days and festivals? Christmas, Diwali,
No,
Hanukkah.
This would be impermissible. So if you check Hanafi works, like Multaqa al-Abhur, standard Hanafi works, they mention the day of Nayruz in the Persian festivals. It's not permissible to greet them on those festivals with regard to that specific religious festival. So a person can greet them, but not greet them on a religious festival.
Okay. Is selling or breeding dogs for profit permissible?
You see, the outward of a particular hadith, which is mentioned in Bulugh al-Maram by Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, gives the impermissibility of this. But the Hanafis, they take a different, divergent opinion. They permit breeding of animals to sell those animals, cats and dogs. That's permissible in the Hanafi school.
Why is
Other
that?
schools prohibit it. So they have their own istidlal, which is not something I will go into now, but it's mentioned within the commentaries of hadith why the Hanafis actually permit this.
For our non-Arabic listeners and viewers, what is istidlal?
Istidlal is inference from legal texts from Quran and Sunnah.
Okay. So within the Hanafi school, selling dogs for profit and breeding is permissible.
I wouldn't advise it in this day and age with the incidents with the XL bully dogs and so many young Muslim boys, they want to buy dogs, and it's like it's an extension of the ego. So a man who has no muscles, he needs a dog to demonstrate his ego. So I wouldn't advise people to have these dogs. There's no benefit. In fact, when they mention the permissibility of keeping dogs, there's reasons for that, like as guard dogs or dogs for herding goats and sheep. But in today's day and age, it's become a fashion accessory.
So can I ask you 3 things? A Muslim drug dealer who thinks having a guard dog will protect him on the roads, that's not a justified reason.
A drug dealer is the biggest coward in the world. I live in Birmingham. Many drug dealers there, they are cowards because they eat haram. When they eat haram, anyone who eats haram will always be a coward, irrelevant to how many guns he holds or how many dogs he may have or how many people he has with him. They will always remain cowards because they are eating haram. And when they deal that drug, the addict, they destroy the life of the addict and the family of the addict. The dua of those people is against them.
Even if they're non-Muslims?
Of course, because the non-Muslim in that case is madhloom. He's an insan. Because remember, the hadith states, be careful of the dua of the madhloom, even if he is a non-Muslim.
Okay.
So the poor woman who becomes addicted to drugs and then is prostituted, irrelevant to whether she's a Muslim or non-Muslim, the angels will curse the drug dealer. So these cowards, they would need these dogs to protect them.
What about the fact that we live in the UK, a stable and secure country where we pay council tax for police and for law enforcement services and emergency services? Is a dog really justified in most cases when you have this level of security in a country? I'm not talking about in some areas where it's very unsafe or high levels of robbery. I know this is a bit of we're going to digress here, but I'm just talking about justification for having a dog, because the way I see Muslim brothers having dogs, they use the security, we need it for security and all stuff, but really it's more to do with a flex. It's imitating rappers and drug dealers and gangsters in the mainstream. Is to protect themselves when they're dealing drugs on the roads. And then thirdly, they'll basically justify it by saying that they need a dog to look after their home, when really their home isn't the type of home that you traditionally would think would need guarding for a dog. What's your thoughts on
As
that?
I said, I don't think it's validated through those excuses. Also, take into consideration the saliva of a dog is najis. The sweat of the dog is najis also. So it can be a cause of najis. The hadith states that people keep a dog in the house. The angels of Rahmah do not enter that house. So as opposed to someone with two daughters in the house. In the Sahih of Ibn Hibban, it mentioned someone who has two daughters in a house. A specific type of Rahmah of Allah descends on that house. It's in the Sahih of Ibn Hibban.
Alhamdulillah, that's beautiful to know.
Yes. So to have daughters in the house, this is a source of Rahmah. But to have dogs or pictures in the house, the hadith clearly prohibits that.
Under any circumstances within the Hanafi school, can a Muslim woman marry a non-Muslim man?
That's totally prohibited within the four schools. Bil ijma'. So a Muslim woman to marry a kafir is totally impermissible.
Whether he's a Hindu or a Christian?
Bil ijma'.
Okay.
With consensus. This would be totally impermissible. She should make him adopt Islam.
And what is the status of that relationship?
It would count as zina, as fornication.
Okay. What is the position of the moustache in the Hanafi school?
So the moustache, of course, like the other schools, the trimming of the moustache from above the lip.
Is my moustache okay at the moment?
Yes, as long as it's not growing on top of the lip.
No, clear.
Yeah, that would be fine.
So when it comes over the lips, it becomes a problem.
Then it becomes makruh. Makruh in the Hanafi school means haram. Makruh tahriman. So allowing it to grow onto the lips would be makruh tahriman, and it should be trimmed.
What about this way?
That would be permissible.
Because it's, the Ottoman Turks did it, people in the Indian subcontinent, muchne, kuchne, all that flex.
That wouldn't be a proof though in the Hanafi school.
No, I'm just saying that culturally it's quite
Culturally they shaved also, but shaving would be haram.
Okay. So long as it's not growing over the lips, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. What is a qaza haircut?
So short back and sides, what we have today, this issue is mentioned in the firstly, it's in Sahih Muslim, the prohibition of this type of haircut. But in the Hashiyah of Ibn Abdin, what he mentions, it's to shave one side and to allow another side of the hair to grow. Does this apply to short back and sides today? The answer is, if the length of the hair exceeds three fingers, one side of the hair is longer than the other side by 3 fingers, and one side is shaven, this would fall under this type of haircut, which is makruh tahriman in the Hanafi school. If it doesn't exceed by 3 fingers length, then it would not fall under makruh.
So, just to clarify, if the hair exceeds
the width,
so this much, yeah?
Yes.
This much on one side and completely shaved on the other side.
This would count as qaza haircut.
Do you regard my haircut as a qaza haircut?
No.
Okay.
And that's a common question. But you will find the reference for this within the Hashiyah of Ibn Abdin.
Within the Hanafi school, what is the position on music other than the duff drum?
So some of the ulama, they took position, a lenient view on music, like Abdul Ghani al-Nablusi, rahimahullah, the Damascene scholar from 400 years ago. While other ulama, they took a strict position. So the likes of Al-Imam Ibrahim al-Halabi, the author of Multaqa al-Abhur, he wrote a book, Al-Naqsu wal-Waqsu li Mustahil al-Raqs, mentioning the prohibition of musical instruments and Raqs. To the point that even within the Shafi'i school, there are divergent views. So you have like Al-Imam Ibn Hajar al-Haytami al-Makki, he has a famous work, Kaff al-Ru'a, on prohibition of musical instruments. But then Al-Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, took a lenient view like Abdul Ghani al-Nablusi, rahimahullah. The correct view, in my point, from my reading on this subject, would be more of a middle stance.
Which is?
That is, that firstly, the daf is permitted, And then there are those instruments, alat, which are clearly prohibited in the sunnah.
Like
They would be like string instruments, for instance.
guitars, violins.
Yes, string instruments are one.
Harp.
These type of instruments.
Okay.
Now, Sayyid Alawi al-Maliki rahimahullah in his fatawa, he states that due to saddu dhari'a, now this word saddu dhari'a means barring the means, it's a great source of law for the Maliki school. So for instance, Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah, he prohibited grapes, people from growing grapes, because he knew the grapes were being utilized
For wine.
So it's sometimes this law, saddu dhari'a, applies to permissible things. Sayyid Alawi states we should apply saddu dhari'a to many of the musical instruments because it leads to the haram type of music. What is haram bil ijma'? Music which has lyrics which are impermissible. Music which is accompanied with alcohol. This is all impermissible by ijma'.
So foul, vulgarity, sexual lewdness, the promotion of fahsha and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if it's associated with drinking and drugs, this type of music is totally prohibited by ijma'.
What if it's associated with love?
So then
That used to be a flex 1,000 years ago. Poetry and singing about women and the love for women is something that transcends all civilizations.
yes, so the ulama, they would teach books of literature, Arabic literature, where love of women is mentioned. Works like Diwan al-Mutanabbi, Maqamat al-Hariri, all these classical Arabic literature they have. But those books of poetry even contain vulgarity also. But they would teach it for a purpose, which was literature, in order to excel in language. So in today's day and age, if someone read a book of classical literature which does contain vulgarity, it would not be totally prohibited depending on the purpose of reading the book. But saddu dhari'a is applied to those music, that type of music which is totally haram in the Sharia. Then within the middle we have the grey area. Now Ibn Hazm, he took a divergent opinion. There's another alim also, a Maqdisi alim, who's the author of the book on Shurut al-A'immati Sitta, which is a book on conditions of the 6 scholars of hadith. They took a divergent opinion, but which was totally permitting all musical instruments also, to the extent that Ibn Hazm attempted to weaken a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari. And then Al-Imam Ibn Salah, rahimahullah, the author of the Muqaddimah of Ibn Salah, he condemns Ibn Hazm for this. So that would be a shadh opinion, an anomalous opinion. So saddu dhari'a applies to most music. Then we have certain instruments which are not declared haram totally by the Sharia, and it's a grey area. And then we also have the issue of Raqs, which is dancing. So the Sufis have Hadra, which my mashayikh in Syria, they perform Hadra. Al-Imam Jalaluddin al-Suyuti gave the fatwa permissibility of Hadra. Other ulama also, Abdul Hayy al-Kattani and many other ulama, they permitted the Hadra, which is doing dhikrullah with dancing, with Raqs. But there were other ulama who prohibited this. They said this is not permissible. So that would fall into the issues of khilaf. And when issues fall into issues of khilaf, you cannot declare the Muslims as being fasiq, as being transgressors.
Jazakallah khair for that Q&A, Sheikh. I hope our listeners and viewers benefited from these questions, because some of them are like everyday questions, especially for Muslims living in the West. I think things to do with music, things to do with haircut, things to do with these kind of...
Now with globalization, these questions are common in every Muslim country. So the haircuts, they were common in Damascus. Music is common in Morocco. Everywhere you go, the globalization has changed the face of the Islamic world.
There was actually one last one which I forgot. What's the position of halala? So halala in the sense that a man and a wife have divorced, genuine divorce, in the sense that there's no messing about. Both, the husband had intent, gave her talaq, they parted.
3 divorces.
Under which circumstances can they remarry?
So this is an important question. This halala.
Because this has been abused by some people.
Yes. So this halala now. Firstly, a planned halala. Zayd divorces his wife. Then he plans a halala by making another man marry his wife, have sexual intercourse with her, and then divorce her, and then Zayd marries her again. This planned halala is prohibited. The question is, some of them say oh, the other man, the second man, may not have had sexual intercourse with her. He may have just been alone and isolated with her in a room, and then he gives talaq. The response to such a jahil, ignorant claim is that then the halala is not even done, because the prerequisite
is for it to be penetrative.
To have sexual intercourse.
Okay.
If there's no sexual intercourse, then it's not done in the first place. But what is the legal status of this? In the Maliki, Shafi'i and Hanbali school, the planned halala is ineffective and it remains a zina. It's ineffective in the three schools. In the Hanafi school, the person who does the planned halala is sinful, it's haram. It's haram. When they use the word makruh in the Hanafi school, it's not a light word. They mean haram. It's haram, it's impermissible.
Both makruhs. Makruh tahrimi.
So when they say the word makruh without qualifying, that counts as makruh tahriman. That's a rule in the Hanafi school.
Also, when you hear the word makruh being used in the context of the Hanafi school, it is by default tahrimi.
Tahriman, unless specified as tanzihan.
Okay.
Now, in the Hanafi school, this action is haram. So even though the nikah, or Zayd takes back his wife with a planned halala, his nikah is valid now. But he is sinful for having done that. The planned halala is totally impermissible. This is common and is abused. It's abused here in the UK, where some people have made committees where they plan halala and they marry women like a Shia mut'ah, momentarily marrying a woman, having sexual intercourse with her, and then permitting her to go back to her husband. Some of the Hanafis in the UK and elsewhere have been doing this, and this is something that should be condemned in the harshest of terms. It's not permissible according to the Hanafi school. It's not permissible according to all four schools. And I've heard Shia in the past criticizing Ahl Sunnah, Sunni people.
They use this.
Yes, but they should know also that it's not permissible in the four Sunni schools. It's not permissible. In the Hanafi school, the nikah with her former husband is permitted, but they are sinful for planning the halal. And it's something that should be condemned.